Good afternoon, everybody. It's Dave Neal here with your afternoon rush hour ride home on this Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Here are the stories we have for your drive. Of course, I'm almost apologetic at this point. More Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds news. The information is pouring in like a fire hydrant. There's so much to get into. Did Ryan Reynolds try to buy the rights to the film? And was the sexual harassment accusations part of that leveraging? I'll have that information, plus new whistleblowers coming out that worked on the film. They have NDAs, so they're not allowed to talk, but the NDAs would be signed by the guy that they might be defending, so maybe they waive those NDAs. We'll have that story. Plus, a wild Olympic stalker situation. An Olympian recorded these two men stalking her at multiple different airports. I'll get into it. And also Taylor Swift caught on camera congratulating her hubby on his trip to the Super Bowl. And lastly, we're going to share this last, just out of respect for the people that don't want this news because it's so heavy. We're going to cover the plane crash from last night. Just going to cover what people are saying, Department of Defense, what is being said. So the military's response also, it is seen as like a casualty event. There is no survivors that they know of from that tragic plane and helicopter collision. So I'll save that for the end of the podcast for those that are just not in the mental capacity to handle it. I understand. I truly do. All right. I got all these stories and more coming up next on The Rush. Okay, before we get to the drama between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, this Bachelor story, if it weren't for the It Ends With Us drama, would be the number one story in our world. It's absolutely wild. Rachel Kirkconnell gets dumped in Tokyo after 4 years with The Bachelor. She was the winner, but he never proposed, which I understand not proposing on the show, but after 4 years, at least show signs you're going to propose. Drop some hints, right? And it ends with them breaking up in Tokyo. So people are looking at past episodes of podcasts where, to see where that friction was. And here's a post. I'm just going to read the title for you. Throwback when Matt and Rachel had a fight over their dinner spot. Now, why is this interesting? It's interesting because Matt James and Rachel Kirkconnell broke up in part because of Rachel's story where she felt so stressed out and sad that she took him to a sushi place for dinner and it didn't live up to what they wanted it to live up on Yelp. And whether or not that's Matt being a food curator, maybe, the stress of trying to keep him happy, who knows? The poster here said Rachel is literally his assistant for his food content, and he gets to post it to Instagram and includes her in the post. And then same with the Call Her Daddy interview. It looks like Matt is always on the phone and easily gets mad. I don't know, guys. What do you think? All right, let's listen to it and then I'll react. But this has all the makings of modern romance with the younger generation where you're fighting for the attention of somebody versus the attention of their screen.
Ooh, this one's hilarious. We were on our way to dinner, and Matt, you were on the phone or something, and you told me to find a place for dinner.
Oh, so pissed.
And I'm like scrolling through TikTok, like listening to all these reviews, and Matt's like, can you turn that down? Like, that's annoying, and I just can't hear that right now. So I'm annoyed that he told me that I can't listen to these TikToks, because I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know if they're like saying if it's good or not if I have to mute it? So I'm just like, okay. So I just swipe out of TikTok and I just start doing my own thing. We get to like our destination or like the city, and Matt's like, so did you find a dinner place? And I'm like, no, you said I couldn't listen to those videos. And then it turned, and he was like, oh, don't do that. You could have looked on Google, Instagram, like you could pull up freaking McDonald's for all I care, but like don't blame the fact that we don't have a dinner spot on me turning or telling you to turn down the TikTok or whatever. Got in a huge fight about it. And that was the whole like, you listen, but you're not hearing me. Like just, it's your fault that we don't have a dinner spot, which this is the things that we argue about, you guys.
By the way, when you watch these things in hindsight, they're always cringeworthy because the relationship didn't work out. And could you imagine explaining this scenario to somebody from like the 1700s? They're out there tilling the land. The 1800s, there's guys in coal mines dying, and it's like, what did you guys fight over? Well, we have the internet. What's that? Yeah, it's a device that gives you everything you want in the world, huh? Yeah, we were in an Uber. What's an Uber? It's like a taxi. What's a taxi? It's a car. What's a car? Well, it just takes you to the location. And again, I'm not trying to trivialize trivialize their breakup, but it just goes to show that phones are probably the biggest issue in relationships. Just a PSA, my wife and I, we do what's called device free time. So we'll look at each other, and sometimes you don't know if you're working on your phone or playing on your phone, and sometimes you start working and then end up playing, and by playing I mean consuming. And it can be really tough, especially as influencers. They've got comments to respond to, brand deals, this and that. A lot of people love the idea of having separate phones. Like, here's the phone I work on and here's the phone I take out to dinner that can let me scroll the internet but not like access my social media so you can look at Yelp reviews. I don't have a solution, but I'll tell you this, you need to address the problem. And if you're in a relationship that has communication issues, you got to fix the phone issue first. And clearly they did not do that. All right, let's go to this Olympic story. It's absolutely insane. It's an insane story. Gabby Thomas claims a stalker knew her flight schedule and harassed her for autographs in multiple cities. I'm going to play this for you. This is absolutely wild.
I need some advice right now because I fear that I'm being stalked and I genuinely don't know what to do or who to go to. At this point, every time I travel, I'm afraid that these men, it's 3 to 6 of them, middle-aged, are going to show up and harass me. And it doesn't matter what city. They've come when I was traveling to and from Chicago. They've come when I'm traveling to and from Miami. And they have my flight information. And they show up either at the front door of the airport, at the correct concourse, or they show up at my gate, which means they have flight tickets and they get past security and all that. And they show up and they ask me to sign a bunch of these photos and pictures of me, like 40 of them. I don't know what they're doing with them. Probably selling them. I don't care. What scares me is that they have my flight information, even when I don't even know what time I'm flying out sometimes. I don't tell anyone my flight information. I've changed all my email passwords. I don't know if they're hacking me, but they get really aggressive and hostile if I say no. And when I'm by myself, it's really scary. They got really hostile with my boyfriend yesterday. It's not even airline specific, but I don't know how they're getting my flight information, and it's really starting to freak me out. And honestly, I don't know who to go to about this. I don't know, do I go to the police? Do I go to like airport security? It's like a multi-city thing. So it's like I can't just go to the Austin police because they're not in Austin right now. I don't know where these people live.
It's really scary. And if you go to Gabby Douglas's page, I mean, let me try to pull up her page here, but she actually had video of these guys. Oh, excuse me, Gabby Thomas. I'm sorry, Gabby Thomas. She has video of, did I call her Gabby Douglas? Gabby Thomas. She has video of these guys, and then she tries to record them. Here's an update.
Okay, so update. My team got a tip via email, and we think that this might be one of the guys in the video. He has an arrest history, and he has a history of calling airlines every day to get flight reservation information about famous people and athletes.
This is insane that this is going on. To think that we have an Olympic hero here, that isn't protected. She actually has a video, and if you're listening on the audio, I'll go through what's happening here.
These guys are stalking me at the Chicago United Airport.
So she has the video of them walking away, and good on her for calling it, but she's in the airport, and people are saying, are you okay? This is absolutely wild that this is happening in plain sight.
They're stalking me at O'Hare. I got your faces.
She got their faces, so now she has their information. And look, I want justice for Gabby Thomas, and I want it today. Wild, wild stuff. If you're listening on the audio, go to YouTube if you want to check this out. So creepy. Again, this is just some of the stuff you have to deal with if you're a famous person, but not just a famous person, a young, attractive, famous person. Clearly, there's more to the story than them just wanting autographs. I mean, first of all, who's paying for autographs anyway? So we'll find out. We're going to stay on this story. We're going to find out if there's any more information. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back with your updates on Justin Baldoni, Ryan Reynolds, and Blake Lively drama. That coming next. I do want to thank everyone for all of the tagging me in your TikToks, the amount of people that are working on this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Ryan Reynolds story. It's fascinating. And I understand if people are annoyed about this, but it really is the perfect story, very sad story that fits into what we do here, which is twice daily updates all day long with all of the news and just giving you the story as they develop. So let's go to this TikToker, Evelyn OK. She was able to unearth evidence that was from September 15th, which showed Ryan Reynolds was willing to offer millions to buy the rights to It Ends With Us. Now, anyone can buy anything from anybody to an extent, right? It's economics, basic economics. But in this case, were they trying to sabotage Justin and strong arm him into selling this?
Ladies and gentlemen, We got her. I found this article, I read it way back then, on September 15th, 2024, that was published. Now, September 15th is an important date because we saw the HTML text messages on the New York Times website. The metadata showed that those first text messages were put on there on Halloween, October 31st.
So the question is, what happened between September 15th and October 31st? We have just a month and change.
So this is about 45 days earlier, about 6 weeks. This article drops. 6 weeks later, that article starts being made.
I mean, as far as the timeline goes, it is very suspect. The article says Ryan Reynolds is allegedly willing to offer millions to do this for Blake Lively's career. And again, if this is when there was no information of a sexual harassment lawsuit, there was just whispers about the cast on following Justin and whatnot. Insiders spoke with Life and Style magazine saying that Ryan Reynolds is in planning mode to help Lively's career. Ryan is willing to offer millions to Blake's director and co-star Justin Baldoni in an attempt to buy out his stake in the franchise so Blake can continue her role without having to work with Baldoni, with whom she clashed. They said to the outlet, "This is the biggest film Blake has ever made. Ryan wants to make sure she isn't replaced in the sequel." I mean, this is why we need to tax people more. Does Ryan Reynolds have too much money? You know what I mean? You shouldn't, like, if my wife has a problem with her boss, wouldn't it be nice to be like, I'm going to buy your boss's company, fire his ass, and then you can do what you want. Sure, like that would be nice, but it's kind of like a kid in the candy shop. Sometimes you need to learn that the world doesn't always do everything you want it to do. So the article continues, this isn't the first time we've heard about Reynolds working hard to save Lively from even more controversy. Sources told Life and Style magazine earlier this month, Ryan is deeply invested in helping Blake navigate the situation. With his keen eye for branding and his ability to turn any situation into a winning moment, Ryan is working closely with Blake's team to reframe her public image in light of these troubling allegations. Okay, that was written like Ryan Reynolds' mom wrote it. He's got a keen eye. He's so good. He's the most handsome actor. He's a good boy. So it seems Ryan Reynolds really is working overtime to ensure she doesn't have her fall from grace. Now, that article in and of itself, it's like, fine, whatever, but accompanied with the information that New York Times had the metadata dating back to Halloween, it goes to show what the hell happened between mid-September when he was willing to do anything or buy anything into end of October, which is New York Times getting a hold of text messages, which we now know were time-stamped end of October. They wanted us to believe the story was only being sort of unearthed mid-December.
There you go. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, so anyway, thank you so much for the TikTok there. Really good stuff. And here's the brand new information we have. Brand new, hot off the press. This just got to me from Keep It Ash on TikTok. Ashland is her name. And she says that there's a source. So again, we don't have the full info from the source. We love sources. We love when there's some credibility there. We don't have that yet, but have a listen to this. It could be a potential bombshell source coming out.
Tea for you, and I'm spilling it right now. Coming from a verified account, Lady Colin Campbell, a British socialite, a very prolific author who wrote bestsellers about Princess Diana and more. She brushes against royalty. She goes in social circles. She's 75 years old and she's on the verge of retiring. And she says she has written proof that Blake Lively planned to say that Justin Baldoni sexually harassed her. This is her, and she spilled all the F and T, and here we go.
And by the way, when there is a source that comes out, but it's anonymous, it doesn't have much credibility. If a source comes out and has something to lose, if they're wrong, like, you know, an influencer or a journalist, then it's a big story because there's, you know, there's a credibility issue here. So I haven't looked into this source. I don't know what their credibility is. So let's just take it with a grain of salt, but I'm sure more information will be coming out.
Diva has tagged everybody too. There is incontrovertible written proof from earlier last year that Blake Lively threatened Sony Pictures that she would accuse Justin Baldoni of sexual harassment via the New York Times unless they reversed their refusal to use her cut of the movie instead of his. That these threats were recorded months before she did precisely that leads me to conclude that there was no sexual harassment, that she was simply deploying the most dastardly of threats to manipulate, indeed blackmail Sony into giving way to her demands.
It could be that Blake thought she could get away with this because she got Justin to sign that document. You know, the document that says, we won't do this, we will do that, and all of that. So it could be that she thought she had the golden ticket, that golden leverage. The only problem is, if you're going to blackmail somebody, you better win. You know what I mean? You better do it in a way where no one ever finds out. The second you find out, it really crumbles everything up.
Then succeeded so brilliantly in stealing the scriptwriter, director, producer, actor's work from under his nose with that ploy. She goes on to say also, no woman who has been sexually harassed by a man would then give him her baby to hold. She also says she spoke to somebody in Lively's camp, in Blake Lively's camp, that they're not only looking at the destruction of their careers, but also their marriage. They said, I don't see how their marriage can survive, not when you realize how this sorry mess came about. You all know this, we're just gonna solidify it, we all know. Ryan Reynolds has form in hijacking movies from their originators and not only taking credit for them, but taking the profitability as well. When he and Blake Lively realized that It Starts With Us, the sequel of It Ends With Us, was gonna become a huge fit, and they knew that Baldoni had like the rights to that script and the sequel, they made a plan about taking control of the movie from him. Lady Collins says she was also told from that source, it is my view they would have kept him on. He was fantastic in all his roles because they found it so easy to maneuver him into a submissive position. But when Ryan and Blake sat down to watch the footage, she was told Ryan Reynolds became increasingly unsettled when he witnessed the unbridled attraction his wife was displaying towards Baldoni. He went ballistic, he felt threatened, and must have wondered if she was going to lure Baldoni in the way she had lured him in all those years ago. So what does Blake do? She denies being attracted to Baldoni, spins her actions of attraction into victimhood, and blames her co-star for taking advantage of her. You want to read all her posts? She is Lady Colin Camp B.
All right, we will be following Lady Colin Camp B. I mean, she's got 70,000 followers, so it looks like she's got some credibility to her there, and the story lines up. It kind of reads like fan fiction in the sense that it's so fantastical, it can't be real. Is this real life? Is this reality? I have no idea. I'm questioning everything. I think I believe this. I think I believe this timeline, but again, it's going to have to come with that evidence. They say they got the evidence. Why haven't they showed the evidence? Like, what's that? Why are you teasing the evidence? I'm kind of one of those show, don't say. So we're going to have to see. There is another whistleblower. We'll be back with more right after this. I could tell you this right now. I think tomorrow, Friday, is going to be a day we all remember. If the evidence comes out tomorrow that they say they have, this will be bombshell. So anyhow, we could get more from this guy. Citizen journalist reposted his TikTok where he said, hey, I worked on It Ends With Us and I know some information. And by the way, I can't tell you guys how many people have come back into my life that I know from 10 years ago. I know someone from a decade ago that I may have worked with who knows somebody who worked on set. I have about 10 of these stories because I worked in entertainment all with these people. So there's a lot of people that worked on set. Now, they sign NDAs. They don't want to give the tea away to some random people online like me and risk not getting work in the future. But if the NDA, their non-disclosure agreement, is signed between them and Wayfair, which is Justin Baldoni, and they saw things that would benefit Justin Baldoni, I would not be surprised if they said, hey, Justin, I've got an NDA. Do you mind if I talk about this? Let's rework this NDA. So it says NDA review is pending, patience. So if they are allowed to talk, it'll be very easy to get that approved by the Wayfarer team. Fascinating and absolutely wild stuff. All right, I was going to cover Taylor Swift, but I think, are we out of time? All right, let's cover it real quick. New video shows gushing Taylor Swift after the AFC Championship game. This is not a real life situation. So here they are. I thought he was going to propose. Let's just watch this and reset the palette. Here they are, Taylor Swift attaching herself to a winning side.
Hey, you better back your bags, baby. Let's go, dog. Oh my God. I love the way you blocked for Patrick.
His mom goes, I loved the way you blocked for Patrick. What a mom comment. I thought this was Taylor Swift's mom, but this is Travis's mom.
That was amazing.
I'm trying to win a third one. I'm doing anything I possibly can. I'll run through a wall.
Oh, that's awesome.
She says, oh my gosh, it's so insane. Look at this. And again, there's Taylor. No Blake Lively in sight. We'll have to see if any of this Blake Lively story dents Taylor's career. Look, the haters were going to hate her already. We'll see if Taylor can, as I quote, shake it off. All right. We got to get to all this smut conversation. We got to get to the devastating story that came out last night. And as I was recording the podcast for this morning, I didn't have all the details, but I had a pit in my stomach that this would not end well, and it hasn't. All 64 known people, or is it 67, that were involved in the domestic small regional jet crashing into a helicopter are presumed dead. It was a combination of folks, but U.S. figure skaters, championship couples, and more were on board. The U.S. figure skating team was there. We don't have a lot of information, but right away we're learning that. And again, I knew this when I watched the press conference, but like there's a time and a place for everything. And for Donald Trump to start blaming DEI, I literally couldn't watch. Here's the new defense secretary, who, by the way, squeaked through with a tie-breaking vote by J.D. Vance. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in his update on the story.
Annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing.
So a lot to get into. There'll be a lot of information that comes out. And listen, the news is 24/7, right? We do multiple podcasts a day. We need to calm down and give grace for figuring things out. And by that, I mean, jumping on Twitter and starting to blame DEI hires, not the right answer. Jumping on Twitter and blaming, defunding of the FDA or the FAA, not the answer. Just like in society, let's relax a little bit and let the dust settle. There's people still being pulled from the wreckage. Here is a response by a reporter to President Trump, who was blaming this accident on DEI, which is, the hotbed term for diversity, equity, inclusion, basically saying this crash was due to incompetence because we were hiring minorities, I'm assuming, when they weren't capable to do the job. That's the assumption when you blame it on DEI.
The cited FAA text that you read is real, but the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website. No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it.
So the reason why this combative nature is happening is because it was in Trump's initial tweet, really, and then his initial reporting here of the news where he started to assign blame to the enemies. And then the reporter says, actually, that this policy has been in place for 12 years now. So if it was so bad, why didn't you get rid of it? So it's absolutely not the conversation you want to be having when you've got people mourning out there. This is not, this is just not what you want from a leader. You want, the first half of the conversation was fine when he was talking about, our heart goes out to the people here. It was a senseless accident, and we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened. Period. There's nothing else to say at this point if you don't know.
That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this.
So the reporter says, I'm trying to find the conclusion of how you can blame diversity for this accident.
Crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
Because he has common sense. Sadly, let's end on this note, or I should say, this is a wild, almost Final Destination-like instance. A skater, an ice skater named John Maravilla, he says he was supposed to be on the flight, but couldn't board with his dog. Figure skater John Maravilla, his life was spared because his dog was too big to board American Airlines Flight 5342, forcing the young athlete to drive himself back to Washington, D.C. Just several hours after he was turned away at the gate, the airplane collided with a military helicopter about half a mile short of the Reagan Airport runway, which authorities fear claimed the lives of everyone on board. I would be, I got goosebumps thinking about it. On a much sort of lesser level, when I was watching the fires rage through Altadena, my wife and I were heartbroken because every home that we tried to buy in California was in Altadena. All of the homes we looked at essentially were burnt down. And while it's a different, like in higher level of tragedy here, to think that if you make one decision in life, that happens, and if you make another, this happens. So this guy's dog saves his life because he wasn't boarding a flight that ended up colliding senselessly with a helicopter. It's just an absolute wild story, and I'm sure he's counting his blessings. I'm sure it's such a tragic day to know that your friends, family were on that plane and you weren't. I cannot imagine. There are so many other stories regarding some of the victims here, involving youth skaters and things. I'm not prepared to cover it right now. And in fact, I don't know if this is the right medium to discuss that all, but we'll try to sift through all of the stories and try to figure it all out. And honestly, I hope you call out the bullshit. I hope you as an audience respect that I can't watch the president start blaming people literally 12 hours after the thing, and we be okay with it. We're going to continue to resist normalizing that type of behavior. I hope you're okay with that. If you are, please consider giving us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, consider subscribing. Thanks so much. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be another crazy and wild day here. I'm Dave Neal. This is The Rush.